invited here to Luyanda Fatuse, one of the risk consultants at BSLI Group, Risk Management Services. Today we're going to speak about risk identification, but we have to understand that the risk identification is a process of the overall system of risk management in regards. So this is a very crucial, important part to understand, which I'll able to clarify much more in the next slide to understand more about risk identification. But we can never able to dull or dwell in risk identification without understanding what is the definition of risk management. It's of crucial importance. It's advisable that risk management to be driven from a top-down approach if you want to see the effectiveness of it, of bearing the fruits of the system of risk management within any given organization. That's why I say it's crucial importance that risk management be driven by the board of directors or the executive management team, for they are the people supposed to establish objectives that are more aligned and consistent with the constitutional or legislative mandate why that organization exists. Because it's crucial important to understand you cannot develop, establish objectives or goals that are contrary to the purpose while the given organization exists. That's why if the process of risk management is driven from the top down, the executive management team as well as the board of directors with them expertise of advisors or from the legal expertise, a legal lawyer, advocate, a board secretary with the chief risk officer and able to guide the same. The objectives we are trying to establish or develop, it might be contrary to the mandate why we exist. That's why it's crucial important to stand. It's of crucial importance because why is, as that's what I'm trying to say here, of crucial importance about establishing objectives that are consistent with the mandate of the organization. Because why? Risk exists because why there's objectives and strategies within the strategic plan and performance management system of any given organization. That ultimate plan, we call them the strategic plan. But in your strategic plan, there are objectives. Well, in your strategic plan, there are objectives and strategies how you're able to achieve your objectives. That's why I'm advising to say for the ultimate chief risk officer, according to corporate governance principles, is it lies with the board of directors and executive management or the CEO. That's why it's advisable to have this approach from a top-down approach. Where risk management is effective is where the board of directors as well as the CEO and team, they are the risk owners. They take a full accountability to ensure good risk governance within any given organization. Why is it important to stand? For risk is an uncertainty of an event or variability of outcomes which have the potential to undermine the achievement of the organization's corporate plan objectives. That's what the risk is, you see. So sometimes we tend to focus to only look at the risk from a negative perspective, like an uncertainty of event. But sometimes risk can also be missing out upon an opportunity. I think it's very crucial important to understand, because why I'm saying this, because this will able to give you better understanding when you identify the process of risk identification. What is risk about? Risk is not just a negative of event, an uncertainty of event, but it can also be and missing out upon an opportunity able to enhance you to achieve your objective in regard. I think it's also important to understand within a high-performing organization, they set clear and realistic objectives. That's why I say the process of the strategic planning process of setting either long-term or medium-term objectives, it must be involved from a top-down approach to set the realistically and clear, smart objectives in the ground and apply the principle and develop it with appropriate strategies aligned to the objectives to understand the intrinsic risk, so that what they would and direct resources towards managing such risk on the basis of cost-benefit principle in the ground. I think any organization or entity must maintain effective processes to identify the risk inherent to chosen objectives and strategies. I think it's important to stand to say, now we said risk exists because why? There's what? Objectives and strategies, which means what? Any given organization, whether you're a church ministry, whether you're government, whether you're private sector, whether you're a sport club, a school, whether in your own life, you have to set in a process of identifying what are all those risks that might impact the institution to achieve achieve the objectives and as well as the strategies they set out within their corporate plan or operational plan. Now, when you understand this part, now we can go able to dwell now on the next slide where we will speak about risk identification and what it means to the God. And I'll just give a plain simple example to understand about risk identification process. The first one to understand, which example I give, is about objective setting. Remember, we said risk exists because why? There's objectives to the God. Now I'll give an example. Now understand objectives you find in any given organization. You find different departments. Every department has an objective. Whether it's marketing department, whether it's finance department, whether it is communications department, whether it's operations department or administration. Every department exists because why? There's an objective. If you look at our body, every body part, whether it's my hand, whether it's my eyes, there's a function of it, there's a purpose of it, as well there's an objective why that particular body part exists. Now the same way when we look upon any given organization, we have to understand objective setting, like what is the category, and I'm going to use now the category relating to finance as an example, just to illustrate what I'm trying to get here. Now if you go to a finance, if you have to develop a strategic objective, even finance department has different type of objective. You might find it has some strategic objective, but it also might find that it has functional objectives, depending how many functions or roles are in the finance department. If expenditure, supply chain, income, revenue, or ICTs under finance department, means what? Those will be your functional objectives, which are under, normally it's under one umbrella where you call it the strategic objective. An example I would give, say for instance, if the strategic objective is to ensure financial sustainability or viability of the entity organization, means what? That's the example of the objective is to ensure any given organization, well, they might have a similar objective, but it might be constructed differently. But a mere fact is important to understand there must be an objective. I'll make examples saying based upon the category of finance. In this regard, when you look upon a strategic objective, it might be something to say to ensure financial sustainability or viability of the entity in the regard. Because if your entity of business or organization is not financial viable, it might lead to business closure or being insolvent in the regard. I understand the importance of that because finance is one of the resources able to achieve your objective. Now, if you understand now your objective in the regard, now we look to say what is the risk that might hinder that organization to achieve the objective regard. Now, one example I will just make, when I look upon this objective, there are many types of strategic risks. I will just use example, this one to say, if we look to say, if our objective is to ensure financial viability or sustainability within the entity organization, one of the risks, strategic risks linking to this objective will be inadequate budget to achieve your institutional objectives. Remember why you have objectives. Your finance system is a means how you can achieve those objectives. But now, if you don't have adequate, budget, the money means what it might hinder you to achieve your objectives. So that in itself is a risk. Now, the process we tend to do is saying, what are the root causes that gives birth to this risk? What is the reason? So you might have one type of risk, but you might find that you have many root causes that gives them effect towards that risk. And I just give an example once again towards this one to say, if the risk is inadequate budget to achieve institutional objectives, what are those root causes? Can either be the reason why there's inadequate budget can either be there are insufficient budget due to one client dependency. Because remember, like now, you might not have a lot of clients. You might be dependent on one client. It means what? Due to that, you cannot expand your revenue stream because you're dependent upon that one client. And also, one of the reasons can also be because limited financial resources due to unavailability of sustainable revenue streams in regard. So it means what? You find a client, then now now, and then after 3 months find another client, then after 1 year. So it means what? There's no sustainable revenue streams on a daily basis. It can also bring forth because of this thing of inadequate budget. Also, number 3 can also be failure to attract additional funding resources to the account. That's why this one will link more to the marketing team, where they have to find more clients for the business, able to attract more business to the organization. Also, failure to meet funding mobilization targets. You might find you might have targets to say we want to have so much clients and there's so much money revenue. We are when the people finance department, they do the budgeting and projection, they might have those targets. You might find again the risk is of that is one is the failure to meet those mobilization targets that might hinder you to have inadequate budget, able to achieve your objectives under God. Lastly, also can also be to failure to ensure effective implementation of revenue enhancement strategies. What I'm trying to say is when we look upon risk identification, now you can see it's crucial important to understand risk exists because why? There's objectives in regard. So objectives, based upon objectives, you have to set smart, clear objectives. This is looking from a strategic perspective. It must be adding your corporate plan or strategic plan regard. So because there's objectives, now we have to identify what are all those strategic risks linking towards your objectives. We'll make example about this one, but each and every risk identified, it has root causes. Now, very crucial importance, you have to address the root causes able to bring down the risk. I hope the session makes sense. The next one will able to show you how we rate, based upon the likelihood and impact assessment, all of these root causes to understand whether this risk we identify, whether it's low, moderate, or high in the regard, but based upon the rating. That will be assessment, and that process we call risk assessment process. Thank you. Hope it makes sense. Bye-bye.